Hi everyone! Today we're going to be talking about the USACO training page problem number 2. It's called Gift 1, Greedy Gift Givers. So in this problem, we're given a single integer as our input, which tells us the number of friends that we're dealing with in our friend group. And then it gives us 5 names of the people involved in this gift-giving friend group. After that, it tells us one name, and then the amount of money they give and the amount of people they give it to, and then the people that they give it to. It repeats this how many ever times of the people that are there. For example, if there are 5 people, it'll tell us this input 5 times. So let's start with our pseudocode for this problem. The first thing we're going to want to do is initialize some variables. We're definitely going to need one int variable for the number of friends. And this is in the sample input case 5, but we're just going to initialize it to 0 to start off with. We're also going to want an array for the names of our friends and an array for the amount of money in each of their accounts. So we can start off by making a string array for names, and we also want an int array for money. And the lengths of these arrays are going to be the number of friends. So it's really important in C++ to always initialize every single value in your int array to 0, because usually it's at first set to a really random number. So let's also take note of that. Set int array values to 0. And we also want to take in our names input, the names of each of the friends. The next thing we're going to want to do is for each of the number of friends, so here we're going to be using a for loop, and it's going to be up till the number of friends. We're going to identify the giver, the money given by the giver, the number of people given to, and the receivers. And I'm just adding an S because we're not sure whether it's only one person or multiple people. We're also going to want to calculate the money per person, which is actually an int here. And the money per person here, if we go back to the problem, it tells us that the money per person is actually the total money split among those 3 people, and there's no decimal places, which is why we're just initializing it to an integer. For example, in the problem, it gives Dave $200 and it splits it among 3 people, which turns out to 66 each and a remainder of 2. So in this case, we're just going to be using the simple division sign. So the money per person would be equal to the money given divided by the num of people. Similarly, we're going to be calculating the remainder value, and this actually is going to be equal to the money given modulus of the num of people, because this will give us the remainder when money given is divided by num of people. So now we kind of want a structure to divide the funds up and to add these money per person, remainder, and subtract all of the money from the giver's account. So we're going to be using a for loop here, and we're going to be initializing it with I and then having it go up till num of people, because that's the amount of times we want to distribute the money per person. And in this for loop, we want to go through the array. So first we want to take in, the name of the receiver. And once we have the name of the receiver, what we're going to be doing is going through the array with another for loop. So now we're going to initialize J And j, since we're going through the array of strings, is going to be limited at number of friends. And now what we're going to be doing is looking for this receiver string. We don't know what the indexes for each of the corresponding names are, so we have to find it through this method. So we can use an if statement. So if receiver is equal to names j, accessing the value at index j, then we're going to want to add money per person into that person's account. And we're going to want to do this with each of the num of people, which is why we have a for loop for this. We also want to add in the remainder and subtract away the money given from the giver's account. And so similarly, how we access the receiver, we're also going to be accessing the giver's name because we're not sure, again, the exact index of this. So we're going to be setting up another for loop restricted with the number of friends. And in this case, we're going to set up a similar if statement, but we're now going to be looking for giver. And so when we find this, we want to add remainder in, but also subtract the money given. And so this is the process to essentially complete the addition and subtraction for one person's giving and receiving. We want to do this for all 5 people. So we're going to actually wrap this whole thing with a for loop that goes up till number of friends. So we can set this value to another value, h, number of friends, and we're good to go. All we have to do now is print out the names and money of each of the different people in our friend group. So now let's actually code this. So first we're going to initialize our number of friends variable. We're going to set it equal to 0 for now, and then take in the same variable. Once we've taken in this variable, we can then initialize the string array as well as the integer array. So we have, again, our string array for the names, which is set by the limit of number of friends. Oops, forgot the semicolon. Really important to include your semicolons. And then create another array, this time an integer array for the money. Okay, so now that we've created that, again, we want to initialize all of the values in money to 0, just so that we don't have any random values and that could bring us problems later on. So I'm just creating a simple for loop with the restrictions of number of friends and just accessing each of our indexes in money and setting those to 0. So once we're done with that, we can then take in the name values. So just creating a similar for loop to access the indexes of, this time, the string array. And now we're just going to take in and assign each of the names a place in our array. Okay. Now that we've taken in all of our input, we can now start with our function to actually calculate all of the addition and subtraction of the gifts. So again, we want a wrapper for loop for the number of friends because we want to repeat this process the amount of times of the number of friends we have. In the case of the sample input, this is 5. So we're just going to create that for loop. And now we want to initialize a string for our giver. So string giver, which will give us the name of our giver, and take in the name of our giver. Next, we want to input the money that our giver is giving. So money given, and take in money given. The next number that we have to input is the number of people that our giver is giving to. So we're just going to name that num of people, and we're going to take in num of people. So there's one etch condition that we actually want to address here before we move on. And this is something that we can see in our sample case, actually. So if we go to our sample input, we can see that at the end, the person named Vic actually had $0 and gave it to 0 people. So just so we're making sure we don't have a case where the computer is trying to figure out 0 divided by 0 and possibly throw an exception or have a compile error, we're just going to be addressing this edge condition right now. So we're going to be doing this by creating an if statement. So if money given is equal to 0 and your num of people is equal to 0, then we just want to continue. And what this means is that it's going to skip the entirety of the code after this and move up to the next iteration of the loop, which actually will just then move on to the next name and disregard that 0 and 0, which is completely fine in this case. The next thing we're going to do is calculate the money per person. So this is just an integer, money per person. And again, this is the total money given divided by the num of people, which is how many people it's divided by. The next thing we want to calculate is the remainder. So int remainder is equal to the money given mod the num of people. Okay, so now we're ready to get into who is receiving it and actually giving the money to these people. So we're going to start off with creating our for loop to iterate the number of times we have of the num of people so that we can take in all of the receivers. So int j is equal to 0, and we're just creating another for loop with the bounds of num of people. So now we want to initialize a string called receiver. And this will be the current person we're working with to receive the amount of money per person. So we take in this string value. And the next thing we want to do is actually find the index of this string value so we can access it in the money array as well. To do this, again, we're going to use a for loop. And we're going to want to access all of the elements, or traverse through all of the elements in our names array, which is limited by number of friends. And now we're going to create a simple if statement. So if receiver is equal to names h, which is essentially the name at the particular index h, then we know that we found our index. And since the index correspond from names and money, meaning that the person in names 0 has the money in money 0, we can access this person's account at money h. And what we're going to do here is just add in the money per person. Okay, so now we've added in that person's share of the money given. Our next step is actually going to be to subtract the money given from the giver's account and add in the remainder. So again, we're going to be accessing this person's money through finding their name in the names array and using that index to access their amount of money. So I'm just going to create a similar for loop. And here, if giver is equal to names of H, then what we can do is we can take money H and subtract out the money given. Once we subtracted out the money given, we can add in the remainder. Okay, so now we've essentially distributed the money from the money given, subtracted that money from the giver's account, and then added back in the remainder, which is all of the steps needed to create or to distribute the money to each person's account. The last thing that's left for us to do is to actually output all of the data after everything has been inputted. So we can just create another for loop at the end to traverse through the names and money array and print out all of these values. So here our limit is going to be number of friends. And here we're just going to format it like how they did in the sample output. So first you output the name, a space, and then you output their money. Just end line. Okay. So now we're just going to add in our return 0, and we should be good to go. So let's build and run this program. So I'm just going to be using the sample input from the USACO website. So we start off with 5 friends. Their names are Dave, Laura, Owen, Vic, and Amber. So we start off with Dave giving away $200 to 3 people whose names are Laura, Owen, and Vic. Owen then gives $500 to 1 person who turns out to be Dave. Amber gives $150 to 2 people who are Vic and Owen. Laura gives $0 out to 2 people who would be Amber and Vic. And then finally, Vic gives out $0 to 0 people. So our output now should be Dave, 302, Laura, 66, Owen, negative 359, Vic, 141, and Amber, negative 150. So let's see if this worked. So we have Dave, 302, which is correct. Laura, 66, also correct. Owen, negative 359, also correct. Vic, 141, and Amber, negative 150. So it looks like we got all of the output values correctly, so this code should be good to go. Thank you guys so much for watching, and subscribe for more USACO training page videos. Thank you!